Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam.
In this episode, we return to the Moon Palace, where Oraya is navigating the trials of the Kajari tournament and the emotional challenges that come with living in such close proximity to so many sexy vampires. So regulate your heart rate and protect your neck, and maybe your heart, as we delve into chapters 13 to 25 of Carissa Broadbent's The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Okay, we're back. Episode 14, I believe, and it's been a pretty dramatic 13 or so chapters.
I've loved it. Genuinely loved it. You know the general trend of where it's going, but there's still so many surprises. And where it leaves off at the end of this section, it was such a page-turning moment where, you know, we'd set this as the end point. I was like, no, I can't believe I have to wait to read more. This is outrageous.
Yeah, and also just by chance, we seem to keep ending with Oraya being carried off by Raihn.
That's how we've chosen to structure it. You know, that was an intentional thing, Dan.
Of course.
Every single big Raihn Oraya moment leading up to their eventual smooching.
It's coming. So do you want to give us a bit of a recap of these last 13 chapters?
A bit of a recap. Let me give you a lot of a recap. Okay. It wasn't like the first time where it actually felt like there was quite a succinct way to describe everything, but there's been lots going on. So let me get right into it. So we begin this section of the book with a flashback to Oraya as a child. She asks about her family and begs Vincent to tell her where she came from. He resists, but eventually relents and tells her she is from a city called Salonai, deep within Raihn territory. He could never take her there without causing a war. It is far too dangerous. Oraya wishes she could be a vampire, but Vincent says turning her would be too dangerous. But then he thinks and suggests there is one way. Jumping back to the present day, Oraya wakes up after passing out following the attack and finds Misha tending to one of Raihn's wounds. Oraya reluctantly agrees to team up with Misha and Raihn shows her the head of the vampire who attacked her. The black veins showing on the skin indicate that he was in the late stages of the blood-borne curse. The three of them converse about their various magical abilities. Misha seems to be a natural. Oraya says she's tried and failed to learn magic many times. Raihn is dismissive and claims he doesn't know much, despite blasting out an asterisk earlier in the book. There is a loud banging at the door. It's Angelica, the leader of the group from the House of Blood. She's looking for the vampire who Oraya killed. She immediately attacks Raihn and they spar with one another in aggressive demonstrations of strength. Angelica backs off but says she will kill Oraya in the next trial. Oraya goes to meet Vincent. Oraya accuses him of not being there to help him. He gets angry and says he's got a lot going on and he's been doing everything he can. Tensions flare and then cool again. Oraya leaves. Raihn, Misha and Oraya spend several days training in preparation for the next trial. Oraya and Raihn keep clashing and bickering. There's a simmering tension, but still erring on the side of antagonism rather than the romance we're all waiting for. Raihn gets too close to Oraya during an argument, and she unexpectedly blasts him with magic that throws him out of a window. Following the argument, Oraya storms off to find Vincent, but he's a no-show. On her walk back, she thinks of the first time she killed a vampire and her history of self-harm. She is pulled out of her reverie by the smell of tobacco. A mysterious stranger is smoking. She buys the cigarillos off him. He says he recognizes her from the trials, and then they part ways. Upon her return, Oraya and Misha talk and learn more about each other. Oraya heads to bed, but upon leaving the room, Raihn returns. Oraya listens in to him and Misha talking. Raihn is drunk, and it sounds like he's done something he promised he wouldn't do again, but it's unclear what that was. The night after is the waning moon trial. The contestants are all placed in a maze, which is filled with locked doors that can only be opened by placing a weight on it, in this instance the body of another opponent. Oraya fights the young vampire Ibrahim, followed by Carissa, the magic user, and then a few others. Along the way she sees that humans have been thrown in there as stage dressing, and the vampires have slaughtered them. A small girl is still alive but wounded. Oraya picks her up, intending to carry her out of the maze to safety. She finds Raihn, and at one point almost turns on him to open a locked door. But then he points out that there are other bodies that they can use rather than her having to kill him. In the final stretch, they fight Angelica. She gravely wounds Oraya, but is then defeated. Oraya passes out, clutching the young girl. She awakens back in their flat. Misha is looking after her. Some time has passed and Oraya is now mostly healed. She heads out to speak to Vincent, but changes her mind and heads to the human districts to kill some vamps. Raihn is watching her. He invites her to follow him and he shows her the little girl survived and he has placed her in an orphanage. Oraya vents about her anger at how vampires treat humans, and Raihn sympathizes. He hates it too and reveals that he used to be a human, but was turned. Oraya meets up with Vincent and gets angry at him for letting humans, and children specifically, be used in the games. Vincent claims the decision was beyond his control and reels off some weak excuse that all life is cheap, but Oraya pushes back against him and asks what if she was one of those people. Vincent says sacrifices need to be made to achieve power and you need to be ruthless. Oraya accepts it for now but doesn't push the matter further. There is an interlude chapter. Oraya is a lonely, horny teenager and falls for a young, lonely turned vampire. We don't learn anything else, but there is a sense of foreboding about where that relationship might go. Over the next few weeks, Raihn and Oraya have two types of training with Misha for the trial and working together killing vampires in the human districts. Over these days, they develop a rhythm to their fighting and become an effective fighting team. Misha is also training Oraya to use magic, but she's struggling to recreate the blast that she'd used on Raihn. One night, rather than kill vamps, Raihn takes Oraya to a human pub to get a drink. This forces Oraya to confront her fear of being near regular humans. Oraya marvels at Rain's ability to blend in among humans when she herself feels so awkward. Raihn reveals that Misha is also a turned vampire and that she was the one who dragged him into the Kajari. Before they can talk any more, there is a powerful explosion from somewhere in the city. The Moon Palace has been attacked. One of the towers has collapsed, and the one Oraya, Misha, and Raihn are living in is wreathed in deadly magical nightfire, a magic used by nightborn vampires. It can only be the Rishans who did this. Raihn and Oraya fly back to their flat to find Misha gravely wounded and surrounded by demons. Raihn kills them and flies Misha to safety, leaving Oraya behind until he can return. But before he can come back, more demons burst in. But Oraya, harnessing the energy of the night fire around her, unleashes a devastating magical attack. Raihn swoops in, flies her away before the tower collapses, but as they glide through the night sky, both of them know that this will almost certainly lead to conflict between the Rishon and Hiaj houses. War has arrived in the House of Night.
Ooh.
What a great place to end.
Yeah.
When I read that, I just was like, wow, where's it going to go? Are we even going to see the end of the Kajari? Is this it's already been through, they were saying this is a bit like Hunger Games. So it's already been through, Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and now we're into the last one, whatever that's called.
Whatever that. I had the exact same thought. I was like, we've had those comparisons to Hunger Games, but the big difference is that they're not trapped inside the Moon Palace. They can escape and we can see more of the world. And so you're having this supposedly holy tournament type of thing. The way it's described is that once you're in, you're in. So I'm working on the assumption that there's no way out of the forthcoming Half Moon trials, but then there's going to be this interaction with whatever this war is that's broken out within the city and in the world outside the Moon Palace. So that really opens up in a direction that I wasn't necessarily expecting us to go in.
No. I thought all of the conflicts between the houses and the two sides of the House of Night, it was going to be played out in microcosm within the Kajari. But now you've got these external events directly affecting it. One of the things I thought after reading that was, okay, I can now imagine another source of conflict between Oraya and Vincent. What if Vincent's like, the Russians have launched these attacks. If you win the Kajari, I don't want you to wish to become a vampire. I want you to wish for me to remain in power.
Yeah.
Because we've had those conversations where Oraya has seen, or she describes those different sides of Vincent. There's Vincent the father, and there's Vincent, the king of the Nightborn. And that one, the king always seems to win out in terms of how he treats Oraya ultimately. As much as he loves her, he loves power more.
Yeah, I mean and maybe the midway point between the two is what I've written down as Vincent the Gaslighter.
Isn't he?
He's dreadful. He's like really awful. Whenever she challenges him on anything, he's like, he just really emotionally manipulates her to sort of make her feel like it's all her fault she's terrible for doubting him and all of that.
I'm so glad you've been reading that into it as well, because, you know, we're in the first person narrative, so Oraya is constantly trying to justify Vincent's actions. She's like, well, of course, you know, he's always like this. You know, when he strokes her cheek, and she's like, I've almost flinched because he hasn't touched me in years in any kind of affectionate way. It's like, because he's abusive. Yeah. He's withholding affection.
This is how I know he loves me.
Yeah. Come on, Oraya, you're better than this.
I had the exact same thought, and she makes some really legitimate challenges on some of the sort of uncertainties that she has, and he really kind of manipulates the way she. Yeah. Or you can feel anyway through her reaction whatever it is, 16 plus years of manipulation that he's sort of carried out over that time, because he's the only vampire that she's ever felt like she is safe around. She has to kind of in some way assume that he has good intentions all the time.
It's such a toxic relationship. She is completely dependent on him for survival. He's pulled her into this world where, as much as she is highly trained and he's giving her all those skills, she's still, at the moment, if he ever went like, I don't support you anymore, she's dead. She's absolutely dead. Yeah. And so, like, she has to constantly look for him for love and affection and security, because he's built himself to be that. And I can't help but feel it's because he knows that she is, you know, and I hate the whole destiny thing, is like, she's destined to be something even more powerful than him. Yeah. So he knows that the only way to ever prevent her from rising up against him is to make her see him as this unsurmountable like power.
Yeah, and you can see how threatened Vincent feels in the whole decision to align with Raihn and Misha. That reliance on him specifically is potentially being kind of diluted if she forms any kind of alliance with somebody else.
And now she's realising that, you know, her relationship with Raihn and Misha can be something more positive in her life. She's pulling away and questioning the whole world that Vincent's built around her. And it'll be interesting to see how insecure he feels about that, because you're already feeling a little bit of hostility. And because he is so non-forthcoming with what's actually going on, you have to fill in the gaps. And we know that he's not a very good father, so there's the potential that it's just lies.
So why do you think he's not forthcoming with what's going on? Because I think it's really strange that he wouldn't just lie about what's going on. But the fact that he kind of won't tell her anything, it's like it's very obvious to her that there's something going on, and she sort of tries to ask him, but he won't say anything. And I'm like, why doesn't he just lie and tell her something? But instead he leaves this sort of ambiguity there for her to, you know, hypothesize or theorize.
How much is it like the writer just being like, oh, I can't reveal it right now? So, you know, Carissa Broadbent's choice. But yeah, the other, if we assume that it's coherent within the world, then he's providing her with a level of insecurity again. Yeah. He's like, I can't tell you what the details are. I'm in control of it, though. Remember that I'm the one controlling this. You can't get involved in any of this because it's above your level. But I'm dealing with this. All you need to do is be worried. Just remain worried and insecure, but know that I'm solving it. And that kind of fits with his character.
Yeah. I had this thought that maybe the war that's breaking out just as we leave this chapter is actually something to do with Oraya. And that's why he's sort of withholding that information, like this idea that she is this special person with some form of destiny surrounding her, and that we're assuming that the attacks are coming from the Raihn vampires or territory, and that's where Oraya is from. We found out in that little interlude chapter. Like, I'm just wondering whether there was a reason that she was there, and like there's some kind of conflict that Vincent's kept very deliberately out of Araya's consciousness.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about her being the cause of it. There's definitely the possibility because, like you say, of her origins in their territory. And it could, as well as just keeping her away from other vampires, it could be as long as he keeps her secluded in a way, people might not realize who she is. Like, would they tie together this child from Raihn to the person he has in his castle? Like, how would there be a connection? We've also seen in the flashback, they're so light on detail. I think we covered this in the previous episode. Like the flashback to when the vampires arrived, we're not told what the house looks like. Like we kind of assume it's a shack or something like that because it was trashed. But how much is that memory? How much is that, like, was she in somewhere more grand? Like, but then of course, like, is it something she was born into? Like, like it was just some kind of, is it destiny? Because like her magic is white blue, like the Nightfire. Yeah. She harnessed it as well, so like she's got some power of the House of Night, even though she's not a vampire.
This is where some of my theory is coming from. There's obviously some like deep link there that's she's got that magical power that's related to it. But just going back to, is it like the very first line of the book, or was it in the blurb where it says about her being the person that kind of tears down
topples the empire?
Could that be because the empire goes to war over her, or I guess I'm just thinking of different ways of interpreting that. Or
I'd hope she had more agency in it though, rather than just being the thing that they were fighting over.
Maybe maybe she's sort of rescued. Maybe it becomes full on Hunger Games and Raihn and Misha are actually there as secret agents of the Raihn rebels, and they take her away on a flying spaceship to wherever it is. Like, what is it? Was it Area 13? Not Area 13.
Yeah, it's the one way outside that got like firebombed or whatever.
Yeah, Section 13.
Yeah.
We just literally just lift large chapters out of the Hunger Games, and but I mean that might be absolute nonsense. But there is other stuff. Just now that I've said that as a sort of ridiculous statement, where the way that Raihn talks about Vincent and the general kind of vampire society makes me feel like he's part of some organized rebellion type group.
I mean, he does hate vampire society. Like, he clearly resents being in it.
In the bit where, where he has that fight in the corridor with Angelica, and they're talking about the bloodborne vampire demons from the first trial, and the way he kind of describes them as sort of those poor bastards, like he's talking in a very it feels like it's sort of coming from quite a political, social starting point. Like he's I don't know whether that was just me reading more into it than was there, but it felt like the way he talks to Angelica is like he's trying to reason with her, like we're not enemies with each other, like they're the enemy. And I don't, what did you pick that kind of narrative up?
I mean, Raihn's desire to topple either Vincent or just the whole structure of things and liberate humans is very much front and center of my mind with where his storyline's going. Like he's reluctant to tell Oraya how he got turned, how Misha got turned, but I get the sense that it was against their will and they've ended up in this world despite not wanting it. At least there's another thing with Raihn as well, is that the way he's been described kind of intrigues me. Not just like he's so ripped and really sexy. I mean, like the other bits, when she's watching him fight and his rough and readiness is all an act. He's actually really slick and professional.
Yeah.
But he acts it. And it's his demeanor as well as his fighting style. Like he says, I'm just a turned Russian vampire from the slums. I'm wondering, are you though? Because if you've got this, like, I'm acting all rough and ready, but underneath is almost like this professionalism. Is it he's part of some secret organization that trains elite vampires, or is it that he's actually part of Russian aristocracy, but he fell and he's been growing up in the slums after being part of the Russian ruling house or something like that?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see whether it just becomes like a sort of double bluff and he is just that like absolutely there for the reasons he says he's there, and but I'm just getting these very political undertones, and the fact that we've now had this war, this attack from people from the same area as him.
But it says a lot that we're what, just over halfway through the book, roughly halfway, and we know there's a general route that he's taking, but there's still so many questions. I really like that. Carissa Broadbent has crafted quite a good character in Raihn, in that he seems like a series of contradictions. And we've had this, I resent being turned kind of vampire.
Yeah.
If we could use Buffy's example, when Angel's like, I'm a vampire with a soul, that kind of vibe. We've seen this stuff before, but it's still a very intriguing one, because I love the way, Angel was burdened, whereas Raihn seems to cover up quite well if he has some issues. You only see little glimpses of how troubled he might be, and the fact that when they go into the pub, he's able to shift from being all-powerful, domineering vampire presence to being like, hey, I'm just a guy. I'm just one of you humans. And just like, Oraya is amazed that he can be even more comfortable amongst her own people, that she is.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, he mentions the reason why he's doing the Kajari, not just that Misha dragged him, but he's made a reference to a deathbed promise.
Yeah.
Whose deathbed?
Yeah. And this is where that coupled with the sort of the conversation around him being from, the Raihn slums and all of that, it just... it makes me feel like we're building up for him being this like super principled, ethical type of character who's got this real sort of social conscience, and I think that's all part of that theory for me of like there's this rebellion thing going on and he's part of it, and I think that maybe the mystery here that we're not really talking about is what Misha's motivation is for being in the Kajari, and
maybe I think they're bound by the same promise, but he wasn't going to honor it, and then she was like, no, we have to. Whoever we've promised this thing to, we've got to honor this. And she was the one who dragged him out of his funk, because he's clearly, like I say, he hides it, but he's troubled. Like the bit where he is going out and he's doing something and she's like, not again, it's been a year since you promised you'd never do it again. What do you think that is?
Yeah, my head went to feeding on a human immediately with that, and this kind of like shame around it. And
but is it something more? But I can't figure out what it is. Is it, I don't know,
but it's the way also that when him and Oraya are really kind of bickering at each other during their training, and then afterwards he's like, sorry, I was angry about something else and I took it out on you, is kind of the general gist of the way he describes it. So it's like he's obviously sort of carrying some baggage with him into this, and something to do with the way that she has conducted herself with him or not allowed him to get close to her has like triggered something, maybe.
Yeah, falling back into bad habits.
Or maybe it's just that, he doesn't like being treated like he's one of these, like any other vampire. And she, the way that she's like, I don't trust any of you. I don't really care who you are.
She doesn't see him.
Yeah.
What he wants to be seen as by her.
And it makes him feel like deeply ashamed for maybe the way he's been as a vampire in the past or something.
Yeah.
There was something interesting and I don't know whether you picked it up and whether I've misinterpreted it, in that conversation that he has with Angelica. Because obviously she comes up after they've killed the bloodborne vampire that attacked her. And they're sort of referring to the, him sort of being at that tipping point and it being like this sort of bloodlust that takes over. And he says to her something about it being more than just bloodlust.
Yeah.
And it was like, no one picked up on it. No one referred back to it, but I was like, what does he mean by that? Is he suggesting there's something about Oraya that is...
Well, it's like in the previous episode where we talked about how, everyone was like, you smell delicious.
You smell delicious, yeah.
It's like she is some kind of higher human. Like maybe she is like, she's like the quintessential human. She spent her entire life trying to not be human when really like she is some kind of...
superhuman.
So a superhuman, but you know what I mean. Like, and so it just makes her more delicious. There's something within her that isn't vampiric. It's just so human, and that's why they're like, yum yum yum.
Yeah, it's strange.
We know there's something because it bugs me with when Oraya talks to Vincent about and tells him about the magical blast that she did on Raihn.
So, sorry, the magical blast that she did on Raihn sounds like something else.
Don't know what you're talking about. And Vincent kind of smiles and goes, "Well, we always knew you did have hidden talents."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, she's magical human. But
can we make our every episode Austin Powers reference where this is like Basil, like, yes, we knew she was a fembot all along. Had to get that in there.
Yeah. But so it's just so interesting that her hidden talent is that if she is some kind of, higher level human that has powers, it's still Nightborn magic. Like she's harnessing that, the vampire magic. So what's going on there?
I feel like we should really talk about the Waning Moon trial.
Yeah, actually, I think it's really interesting that this whole book is structured around these trials, and yet we're not discussing them very much because they're action-packed and they're great.
Yeah.
But we're so invested in these characters and all the stuff going on around it that, we're not mentioning. So go ahead, Waning Moon.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, what did you make of it? I think we talked about wanting it not to necessarily just be a sort of physical trial where it's just like, oh, you just fight your way through to the end. And I feel like there was a very simple problem-solving element to it, which was like, you need to just lay a body on this brick and then the door will open.
Yeah, it kind of leans towards all of these trials are going to have a violent element, I think. It was very low-level puzzle-solving. If this was in a video game, you'd be like, okay, well, this didn't take much thought. It's more about the set piece.
Interesting that you mentioned video game, because when I was reading it or listening to it, I was like, this is set up like a sort of video game with like, sort of small boss, bigger boss, and then like end of level boss type of thing with Angelica and it was I think. I enjoyed the action. I thought it was really good, but the most interesting part was like the little girl that she saves and the whole interaction there, and that kind of told us a lot about Oraya. And obviously, she looked at this little girl and saw herself as a child, didn't she? And it was a sort of that seemed to be kind of the main thing of the whole trial. I mean, I guess there was a thing with Raihn as well, with kind of him demonstrating that she can trust him. And
is that like that moment where they were like, well, we need to open this door, and Araya's first response is, well, I'm going to kill you, and he's like, no, we could just go and get one of the bodies. I was part of me that thought, is this being played for laughs, or is this showing how Oraya still doesn't trust him, and it will come back later when he's just thinking, well, look, given a moment's notice, you were going to kill me. Like, I don't think it's going to go that way. I think it was more, for me, it was played more for laughs.
So I thought, in that moment, I thought she swung at him because she thought he was going to grab the girl.
Oh, I thought he was going to, like, it's you or me. And that's
so my interpretation of that was she immediately thought that he was going to grab the little girl that she rescued and use her to open the door.
Yeah, it does make sense.
And then she swung at him. And it was quite funny. Like, the delivery is quite good. And he's like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And it, like, on the audiobook, it really made me laugh. Where he's like, there's a body like just there. Like we literally just killed a bloodborne vampire. Like,
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite good actually. But
I felt sorry for Ibrahim. He's like this teenager. You're not going to get past me, and she just takes him down. But he survived, so he'll be back even weaker than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Like I still feel like he's going to come into it more at the end because it's like just the very fact that Misha took the time to mention to Oraya that Ibrahim had crawled through. At the end, you're like, why would anyone mention that unless it was going to be in some way relevant? Because
Coretta's there as well, and then gets killed and there's no more mention of her.
Yeah.
And then also we're running out of people that Oraya looked at when they first arrived. You know, in terms of like, oh, there's that person there, and there's that person there. Do we have anyone left who hasn't been killed other than the very wounded Ibrahim?
Not that I can think of.
No. So I think they're going to have to introduce some more, or, you know, who knows? I mean, we're going to have to. Otherwise, we don't have that connection to, oh, it's that person from the opening feast. They're the magic one, or they're the crazy one. You know, like,
unless they do become much more like problem-solving trials. And
Ibrahim, I feel like in the Half Moon trial is going to be on their team. You know, and he'll be on crutches, be like, "You've got to help me."
Turn up at the door one day, just like,
"I'm good to go."
I mean, he's supposedly like a powerful magic user.
Yeah, and
so,
like if he wasn't crippled all the time, he would be really good at fighting and everything as well. Like, you know, his parents had to hobble him because he was too
formidable.
Good.
Yeah,
it's like, oh damn us, we produce such amazing children.
Yeah, and they have that little interaction, don't they? Where she says like, "I don't want to kill you. I always liked you. I always thought we were like similar in some ways." And they kind of have that moment where they're like, "Oh yeah, I would."
And it was a good mechanic there in the story to show that you had to make those choices. Yeah. And after that point, it seemingly got a bit easier because Coretta was just like, "I'm going to control your mind."
Do you think that was a bit inconsistent with Araya's character, where she's like, "I don't want to kill you either"? It's like, well, she wants to kill all of them. Like,
you literally. Oh, it's because you know his name, so he's humanized a bit more.
Or maybe it's just like she is actually deep down, she's just this bleeding heart, and because he's had this horrible, you know, experience with his parents pulling his teeth out.
Who's the vampire she fell in love with?
So I was going to ask you about this because you said in the summary about it being Oraya falling in love. If you read that again, there is no mention of Araya's name in that whole interlude.
Yeah, I just assumed it was because it's a human girl who's 16.
Yeah.
I was like, that's her age.
My first thing was probably is Oraya, but I was like, what if this is something Nyaxia, like the story of Nyaxia, because there's a thing about her falling in love.
Hold on, what if it's Araya's parents?
And she's half vampire. Yeah.
Good point. I hadn't thought about it. No, I just assumed it was.
Yeah, I definitely hadn't thought of Araya's parents. I'd thought of like, oh, maybe it's Nyaxia. And obviously the other interludes do very obviously kind of
have Vincent in there going,
yeah, they have Vincent
Oraya, you need to get better.
Yeah.
But this one doesn't. Yeah, okay. No, good point. Yeah, okay, I've decided. It's her parents.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but I think I'm on board with that. So we're going to get some context of like why she is special or different. I just wonder whether, you know, she could be actually the child of some Raihn royalty or something like that. And actually that's, I don't know, might be pushing it too far. Okay, here's another point on this. Like, I'm expecting this at some point to get like all hot and steamy.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not getting any vibes from Oraya as this kind of sexual character.
What was she?
It's only the last couple of bits where she sort of noticed him in a kind of like, oh my god, he is super attractive. But I think I'm going to find it really difficult to get on board with Oraya as a sort of sexual being, even when that happens.
See, to my mind, she was kind of noticing Raihn's qualities, like, oh, he's so broad. I mean, I guess one of the initial descriptions was, oh, his face was so kind of like, his features are so strong but still handsome, or something like that.
For me, there's almost nothing, and then there's these comments like, and Raihn looked like he'd be good at fucking. I was like, what the where did that come from?
Exactly.
Oraya! For goodness sake!
Dirty. No, okay. Like, exactly. For me, that felt like a natural progression from what I'd been reading.
Really?
Like, yeah. It's like she's constantly commenting about how broad he was.
I don't know.
And the curve of his neck and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So yes, I'm not denying that stuff's in there, but I think the way she talks about it doesn't go into like a sort of hot and steamy type of description. It's just like a noticing. What I'm hoping is that before we get to that point of hot and steaminess, is that the narrative around the way she looks at him gets hotter and steamier to get us there. Because I think if it happened now, I'd be like, this feels like even though it hasn't ramped up.
But I feel like the way that they're fighting and training together, there's like, if you were to portray that on the screen, you would really get a chemistry between the two of them. The whole reason, like, he gets too close is why she does the magical blast, because like she suddenly gets defensive because she feels like she's letting herself be a bit too open with him while they're fighting, and then he's like, he's stepping forwards, challenging her, and she's like, get away, and like he pushes too far. But it's because they have the whole reason they're at odds with one another is because she's not open to him, and he's just like, you've got to be open with me, you've got to be open. And it's only when they start fighting that they start to cooperate more, when that opens himself up to that emotional attachment.
Yeah, and actually I think to challenge my own sort of original point on this, I think maybe I'm thinking about it too much as just like a sexual thing, and actually this can be like a romantic thing where it's not about like the lust. This is about an actual, because she talks about like she realised that he was sat close to her and she didn't feel the need to move away and stuff. So it's not necessarily just a kind of, there's been those comments like he looks like he'd be good at fucking, which
there's only been one of those comments. Has there been more than one?
Well, but maybe that's my point. Like, why hasn't there been more than one? If that's
we're about to have more, then you can have all the comments you want, Dan.
Either more or none. Those are my two options.
I just want one in the entire book or 50.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, at the moment, there needs to be a little bit of a kind of.
I'm feeling it. I feel like it's there, but I completely get your point. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. I think we know what direction it's heading, but it's whether it goes down like a deeply sort of lusty route or whether it actually goes down like quite a romantic route. And
yeah, I like their connection. I do sense the burgeoning romance. It's that classic, we're antagonistic, but it's because we're drawn to each other. And I get that dynamic, and I like where it's going. Fortunately, I like both of them as characters. So like I'm happy with this. Yeah, I mean, as essential three characters, I do wish Misha was more involved in the plot.
Yeah,
she's really fun.
I totally agree. Like, I really, really like the very limited time that we've spent with her, and I really want her to come into it a lot more. And she sort of adds a lot of joy and relief to the intensity of Oraya. It's like it doesn't matter how miserable and paranoid and whatever Oraya is. She's operating on this high level of enjoying the moment that almost totally contradicts the situation that they're all in with the Kajari tournament and all the the risk that comes along with that.
I hate to feel like just throwing some pessimism here, but how Misha dragged Raihn into the tournament. And when you use the phrase like she's just grabbing life, she's living life to its fullest. Is it going to turn out at some point that she's got some horrible terminal other vampire curse, and so she's like, we better do this or we'll never do it, kind of thing? And so maybe, because when you get these characters and they're like, oh, the moment I was given this death sentence, I knew I had to go and live life to this first, so why not do this? Like it might be nothing, but just thrown out there.
Could the deathbed promise actually be Misha, and she is she's
There you go.
terminally ill, but she's like, well, I need to do this for X, Y, and Z reasons, and
Dan,
because only one person can win the Kajari. Like, my assumption is everyone else dies.
Yeah,
is that right?
That was my understanding. There
Yeah.
can only be, it's Highlander rules.
Yeah, there can be only one, and so at some point, Misha and Raihn would have been assuming
Killed each
that.
other. You know what? I think, Dan, we've just stumbled across your first possibly correct prediction.
No way.
Oh no, I want this to happen now. I mean,
So
in a
we
sad
think,
way.
yeah. So I mean, you teed it up with her being terminally ill.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just piggybacking off of your prediction, really.
Oh,
But,
so ultimately, I'm still right. That sounds. I'm happy with this.
I'll take some credit. I don't. But yeah, I think again there was a bit where where they had the explosion and Raihn and Oraya they come out of the pub and they see the Moon Palace on fire, and we're only really just starting to get Oraya like allowing herself to have a little bit of a more open conversation with Raihn and like over those after. But as soon as they realise Misha is in trouble, the emotional reaction from Oraya was quite kind of, I don't know, like did it sit well with you the way she reacted to that, in a way that she's like allowing herself to emotionally open up to these people? Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not sure if I'm articulating it very well. Like, she's been this super like, I'm going to have to kill all of these people.
Oh yeah.
Don't allow your emotions to kind of.
Yeah, she's letting her defences down. Absolutely.
But do you believe that she would have let her defences down that much? She's like, oh, brilliant. All of the vampires that I'm just about to fight to the death against might be blown up in the Moon Palace over there. This could be an amazing opportunity for me. I might just go and order another beer. Like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too ruthless and brutal. But
she doesn't care about any of the other vampires. She cares about Misha, and that's the nice thing, like.
Right.
Yeah, the three of them are friends, and she wants to, and she, like Raihn, wants Misha to live, for now. Yeah, because they're in the Kajari together. Who's the smoking guy?
Yeah, interesting one, because
was he a vampire? He was a vampire, wasn't he?
I got the sense that he was a vampire because he'd said he was in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I've worked on this assumption that anyone in that crowd who was a human wasn't going to be alive for very long.
So if he, see, before you mentioned about Raihn being part of the resistance, I thought that guy was involved with the attack.
Yeah, that's a good shout. It's interesting the way he sort of chooses to have a conversation with her, and he kind of says he won lots of money betting on her, didn't he? And stuff like that.
He knows about her destiny almost, or who she is, or who she's supposed to be. Right.
This is what I wonder whether, going back to the theory about maybe the war being about her, is the fact that she's now in this tournament and all of the other houses have seen who she is, maybe.
And if Raihn is part of this resistance and he's working with this shady guy, the shady guy is way more the kind of person in an organization who do all the horrible stuff, and Raihn's the idealist who's like, we can make change.
And he's selling cigarettes to kids in a dark alley. But she's not a kid. She's 23.
No, she's an adult. She's an adult. But with Raihn, if we ignore the Misha's dying and she's taking Raihn into the tournament so they can do something, is it that they're also like they're doing it because they've been told by this resistance, you need to make sure that Oraya is on your side when she wins. And then it will come out that they're like, oh, you have just had a motivation behind all this all along. That kind of, you've betrayed me, Raihn, by not being open, or something like that. But I think that smoking guy is involved in some kind of activity against Vincent, and it was the explosions linked with him. So he's Raihn. Yeah.
I think I'm with you on that. Have your predictions changed since the previous episode?
Well, I did predict that Oraya and Misha would become best buds, so that's going according to plan.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how many the vampires that got named are dead. Like, I feel like we needed more. We're running out, so unless something major changes, it's going to feel weird. We're not going to have that connection. Like, is Angelica going to have survived and will still be in it? And that vendetta with the Bloodborne. I have no idea where it's going with this attack. I don't know if, like you say, if it's dictated by the goddess that this tournament has to go on, then of course they have to just get back on with it, and it's not going to derail the entire thing. I don't know what the Half Moon trial is going to be, but it has to be teamwork. So I don't know why I feel like balancing's going to be involved. Just like you have to like try and fight each other while also on a thing where you're keeping it balanced. I don't know why.
That's super specific.
It's super specific.
I mean, you're making a rod for your own back with predictions that specific. I'm not one to give advice on making predictions. I have
what
to
do
say,
you think? Tug of war?
Yeah.
Tug of war.
tug of war. Yeah. So I think maybe the direction for the Kajari becomes the remaining main characters that we've got left almost versus Nyaxia, or it's like it becomes that sort of narrative, or the Kajari becomes like a reflection of Vincent's dodgy corruption or something like that.
We're definitely going to learn more about Vincent and his motivations.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be all just back-ended. I'd be disappointed if everything's just that final, well, you didn't realise, of course, that this was my plan all along and this was my plan all along. I want to have some little seeds and glimpses and more doubt, because we've seen Oraya already questioning Vincent. I want her to not only question society at large, but to hone in on his choices, the things he's doing, and the things that make her start to doubt him.
Yeah.
That's the next step.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think we're onto one with that interlude being about Araya's parents, maybe, and finding out maybe that she is some kind of half vampire, half human with...
I'm pretty sure we talked about in the first episode something about a blade.
A blade, yeah, you did say. That was one of your...
She's not going to become a blade. She's already a blade.
She's already a daywalker, and she just doesn't drink blood or crave it or anything like that, but she's obviously got these magical powers. I think we're heading towards a sort of political uprising type of rebellion, Hunger Gamesy type of scenario. I don't think that's a sort of massively bold prediction, but
I feel like that's going to be the end of the book, because if this is a 2-book series, then the next one will be the fall of the House of Vincent. Okay, so in the next episode we are going to cover all the way up to the end of part 5, which is the end of chapter 41. So I think we're going to have loads of revelations between now and then. Oh, I can't wait. So many new things to talk about in the next episode.
But if you want to share with us your theories, your ideas, what you've enjoyed, what you haven't enjoyed, any theories of ours, probably mine, that you think are super, super stupid, then do get in touch with us on social media. If you're now subscribed and watching along on YouTube, you can leave a comment below. But if you're just on social media, at Escapists Anonymous Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, we'll be there, and we'd love to hear from you and your ideas, and we'll happily read some of them out and base our discussions on them. And if you want to support us, if you're on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us out, helps us to grow, helps us to reach more people. And we'll be back in the next episode in 2 weeks' time. And all that's left to say is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.